Okay, this is going to be a discussion about coloring and why coloring in HueForge doesn't work the way that you probably think it should. So I'm going to bring an image in, and I did record this morning and didn't get ended up getting sidetracked and decided to go a different route with it. So I am going to go down that route rather than try to use this morning's. So first, let's talk about color. Color in HueForge is actually turned into luminance. And you can see this if you come to the image format and click on luminance. And the tricky part is that this image, this color image, let's go back to the color, has black and white here, pretty much. There's a little bit of a bluish tint here, but basically black and white. And then we have this color. And the way that HueForge works is it starts at black being 0 height and white being full height. And black to white covers that entire range. And so, like the white highlights on her face, some of the whiter highlights here, pretty much white on the face is going to be the brightest thing in here. Those are going to be full luminance, going to be 1. And these blacks on the outside, on her headband here, in her eyes, down in these shadows, those are going to be 0. And so her face, which is a color which stands out to us, is actually in the middle of that. It's between the black and the white, somewhere in a gray. And there's plenty of gray in this image too. So if I replace one of these grays with a brown, you'll see that all her face turns brown here, but so does all of this dark area here. And if I put an orange in here, maybe higher, you see the rest of her face turns orange, but so does the rest of this. And we can play games and try to get it to, you can probably even get something that looks pretty good, but we just can't get rid of that bleed through. There's some more games we can play. We could put some whites in here, intermediate whites to keep it there. But then she starts looking weird. The whites overlap. It's not a good look. I'm just saying that that is an option to try to clean up some of this, get rid of some of that. But fundamentally, the problem is that this brown or orange of her face and the blue of her eyes and everything are all within the luminance band of the full black to white. And we can bring in a red here. Maybe let's make it look a little better. We could get something that looks cool. We could abandon a little bit of the idea that she's going to be correctly colored and just pick a color scheme that we like. Maybe even bring some blue in here. We start adding colors, bring some blue in here, and get a kind of a purpley shady idea here. There's all kinds of things we can do to make a cool image, but it's not going to be true to the color that you want. And if you get her face color right, probably we want this natural here, which is actually 12. If we get her face color right, we're probably not going to get, the rest of it right. That maybe shouldn't be orange, it should be yellow. Bring more red up there. Yeah, something like that. Okay, so if we want to get her face right, we can't get her tentacles right. And notice her eyes also, we can't get her eyes right. Her eyes are the same orangish color as her face. That's not ideal. Now, there's things we can do. We can change our color mode to color aware, which gives us some options, but color aware is very experimental and hard to use right now. It's not as smooth. And the problem is it's very hard to tell what color something is. It seems really easy, but even if we look at these whites, you can see here that this is DAD0, B8. That means that red and green are much higher than blue. And so this would maybe be seen as a yellow. How do you determine that's a white rather than a yellow? And this over here is going to be different. We're off by a letter in each group. Between red over here, what we see as white, we have E0, D4, BD. So the BD is much lower, and the D4 is fairly low, is lower as well. So how do you determine that that's a white versus some other color that it could be. This is E9D9C2. So there's a fall off. It's actually a diagonal. So you would consider maybe that's a red, but to us it looks like a white. And so there's a perceptual versus actual difference going on here. And so it's kind of a tricky situation to tell you exactly what's going on everywhere. So right now, the easiest thing to do for an image like this is to bring it into a photo editor, and I've done that already. So I'm going to bring this in to paint.net. I've used paint.net because it's free and easy to get. And so what we want to do is split this image into color domains. Now we're going to use the magic wand tool. We'll come in here, grab what we can do. Now I don't always understand why the magic wand tool works the way it does, to be honest. It seems very odd, some of the choices that it makes, some of the times that it expands beyond its boundaries. But it turns out that once you get most of the surrounding area, it's not too hard to just grab the rest in here. Oops. Hold down Control, then you can add two areas together. So we're going to grab that, grab most of this as we can without going out of it, and then here. Now, obviously, you can go into fine detail. You could split out multiple parts. You could split the patterns. You could split her lips. You could split her eyes. But we want to go down to basically the smallest grouping we can. So there's some more stuff up here. This takes a little bit of time and effort to do, but it doesn't take that long. We're going to grab some more of this, grab up here in the corner. Pull this one back. A little hard to tell where. Okay, and up our tolerance a little bit. Okay, that went too far. As long as we're not too far, we're good. And it's kind of up to you where you draw your boundaries. Do you come all the way out here? Or do you pick a little closer into that's not really your face? I think we went a little too far. Back. Okay, so now we're pretty good here. We're at a little bit right here. White. Okay. And now we'll come in with our lasso tool. And I'm just doing a mouse for, oh, right. Hold down, lasso tool, and grab these areas. And clean some of this. Follow. All. Still working here. Just go around the area. Now, you don't have to be perfect, but you do probably want to be pretty much along the edge. You want to get all this stuff along the edge, all consistent, or else your mesh will be very odd. You need to do a bunch of different small grabs, you do. As you can tell, I am no pro at this. Control mouse wheel also zooms on this program, so that can be helpful. I wish that paint.net had a select +2, or select +1, so I could just extend my selection a little bit, but it doesn't. This down. Okay. Let's see what else we got. The bottom down here we go. Oh, this needs to be grabbed. I missed that. This wasn't part of the original. Grab this. You can see it being selected. All right, so I'm going to go through do this, and I think probably a little bit more magic wand down here. There you go. That worked perfectly. Oh, got a little bit too much here, but rather than undo that magic wand, which went really well, I'm going to use Alt, which is a minus select, and the lasso. Get rid of all this stuff. Be perfect. Some of this can be in here for sure. Okay. And then we'll go check up here. I think there was a little issue up here. Yeah, there's a little issue up here. And I think the easiest thing to do is just going to be to get rid of this stuff that's on the outside. Oops. And we'll hit Alt. If you've got better mouse hands than I do, you can get a bunch of this. And you can get as fine and detailed as you want. Okay, that should be good. So what we're going to do is we are going to do two things. One, we're going to cut this out. Control X, that cuts it out. We're going to add a new layer. We're going to select that layer, and then we're going to paste back in. So that we cut our face out and we paste it into the next layer. Now, there's probably a better way to do this. This is how I know how to do this. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing again with the eyes. The eyes are going to be a problem even with the face separated. So we're going to grab the eyes as much as we can. Most of the eyes, we'll grab this one as well. This part of the eye. Starts up a little bit. That's here. Down a bit. Not too much. Okay, this is probably just best to start grabbing it. So let me work on that. All right, so now I'm going to take the lasso tool. Just grab some more of this stuff. Remember, hit Control to grab the group. And we're going to lasso around here. Get as much of this eye as we can in one go. There we go. There. I think we'll come into this a little bit. Move it out. Good. Okay, so now we have the eyes. We're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to Control X, cut them out. We're going to add a layer. And in this layer, we're going to repaste the eyes. So now we have, escape, get out of your selection. Okay, so now we have 3 layers. If I hide, so I can take the eyes out, and I can take the face out, and then we just, or I can go any individual one of those. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fill in the background here. These away. All right, so we're going to fill this background in, and we want to fill it in with like a dark gray. Probably not 100% dark, but pretty dark gray, so that we have something to glue the face onto. So we'll just flood fill that. Now you'll see that if I turn the face on, you'll see that black under the eyes. However, that's not going to work. That's not going to be the way it is in here. So we'll come to this layer, turn this one off. There's nothing in here. So now we want actually pretty much black for these eyes because we want a little bit of a socket. We'll just fill those in. Then we're going to come to the eyes. Now this is important. These eyes are kind of too dim. This is not very white. And we really, in the image, when we look at it, it looks quite white. So we want the eyes to really show. So what we're going to do is we're going to come to adjustments, and we're just on this layer. Actually, we have the wrong layer selected. Selected. We'll select the layer. Come to adjustments, and we'll do brightness and contrast. This is actually dimmed, so we'll bring these up. We do want to actually increase the contrast a little bit to make it a little bit easier for us to handle in the tool in HueForge. And that's probably good. Okay. If you want, you can also saturate your colors a little bit more. Saturation. We can oversaturate a little bit, which I already have set up in here. See the difference? This is much black and white. This is highly saturated, so saturate it a bit. All right, so now first let's save this project because there's other things we can do with this. So we'll save this. You look all this. Okay, save it as Mocha split up. Okay. Now we just save each individual file. First of all, let me show you that the whole thing's put together. You see this whole the whole image is still here. But now what we're going to do is save these individual layers. So as far as I know, there's not a way to save just a layer in HueForge, or in, not HueForge, in Paint. So if I hide both these layers, though, I can save just the eyes. So, and basically you'd go through, you'd say the eyes, you'd say you flatten it. It'll require you to flatten it when you're saving it. I'll show you. And this is Ahsoka eyes only. Save it. You'd say okay. And then it's going to ask you if you want to flatten. And you flatten it. Then once that's saved, you hit Control Z, undo that flattening, and then you can save each individual layer as each individual file the same way. So I'm not going to walk you through that all here, but let's just save each one of these individual files. All right, so I've saved all those files. Let's hop back into HueForge. Now, we're set up basically for the face, or starting to be set up for the face, so let's start with that. Back in here, we'll open an image, and we'll pull for face. Face only. Now you might wonder why I didn't crop the background. Why didn't I crop out this region when I edited it? And it's for a very simple reason. Well, simple. It's for a reason of me being lazy with the math. So basically, I know that this image is going to print at some size. I haven't decided it yet. Here it sets at 200. Maybe we want to set this on so it'll fit on most regular printers, most like Creality, Ender 3 Pros, things like that. Or we want to set it so it'll fit nicely on a bamboo. In any case, let's size for the Creality. So we'll do 215 width. I didn't know what that width was going to be yet. And because I didn't know what that width was going to be yet, if I had cropped the image, it would be very hard to keep them aligned to the right size. It would be very hard to make sure that the resulting pieces at the end would go together. So I decided to leave it all the same size, big. We can cut this out. I'll show you how to cut this out in the slicer and make it a little bit easier to manipulate. But since the background is that size, I just decided to leave everything the same so I can use the same width and have every printer or every print be the right scale. Okay, so this actually puts us pretty close right here. Where we're at right now is pretty close to what we want. Not exactly. I played with this quite a bit, and I found that some chocolate down here can really help. And then also the big thing is bringing your layer height down for something like a face. Going down to 0.4 millimeter layer height makes a huge difference in the smoothness of the blend, of the color blend. And then the other thing I found was that actually coming down a bit thinner and bringing a different white on top, this lower TD white on top, really helps pop those the white lines out. Gives you that highlight around the nose and on the forehead. So I get just a little bit here. I could go more. That's kind of up to personal preference, how much more you want. I kind of like it subtle. Maybe this is good though. I can make it brighter or more or less yellow. I can make it a little bit more or less orange with the red. The other thing is I can make it all thinner by bringing all of these sliders down. So I bring this down 2, 1, 2, 2. As I bring this top slider down, it dims the whole thing. But that actually looks pretty good to me. It's not quite as dark. It's going to be hard to get exactly there. I can bring the red up a little bit. The problem is these really subtle shades here have to be in layer steps, and so you have to choose whether you want your layer step to come up, maybe even most of the side of the face, or you want to be lower. Kind of like this. We could change the brightness a little bit over here. Maybe we want to make it a little dimmer. That's a big brightness adjustment, so let's adjust it down to a smaller size. You see I dropped the drop down, and now I'm changing 1/10 of the amount each time. Okay, so this looks pretty good to me. So then we're going to go ahead and save this. We'll save this project as Soga face only. It'll automatically put a HFP at the end. Okay, so now this is not really going to be useful for the background, this color scheme, but there's no big deal. Let's open let's open an image. We'll get tentacles only. Now this is not going to look good. This is the problem we had before, right? These don't look right. But we bring most of these sliders down. Bring the tentacles up a bit. This already looks pretty good. But I think there's a little bit of blue in here. So I'm going to grab this blue. Kind of a blue cast to it. Bring the blue and just 1 or 2 layers of blue. Like that. We bring those back. That seems too blue. Let's bring a blue down. Let's bring our brightness down a little bit. Let's get the face black there. I think that's actually pretty good. This is actually really easy to do when it's separated because it's mostly just grayscale. Now you could, fine tune this, adjust this, do what you want to do with it. But this looks pretty good to me. I can brighten it or dim it by moving this upper slider. Okay, that's an important feature. This upper slider is set with dynamic depth. So this mesh is changing height. I'll show you. As I move this slider up and down, it's actually changing the mesh height. It's making the mesh. So you see this max depth? Well, here's the actual depth. 1.4 is the actual depth. And that's the depth of this slider. So in dynamic depth, that's what happens. In static depth, it acts like this slider is all the way at the top all the time. Yeah, the difference is. And then in clipped depth, it also acts like that slider. The height, it's going to be max of 0.2 for the overall mesh. But as you bring it down, it cuts off the top of the mesh. Sort of start seeing it happening here. It's flattening out there and getting flat. So, but I like the dynamic version because it lets me adjust the mesh depth. So I'm going to do that. That may be a little dark. Let's bring the black down one. The blue down. Two. Enough blue in there. So, and that brightens her tentacles a little bit. Gives us a little bit more space here. We still see distinct colors and the bright areas. Maybe we want to bring this down a little bit more. There's bright areas here that aren't blown out but are bright. Yeah, there we go. All right, so I'm happy with that one. This one is really easy to do because it's just mostly black and white with a tiny little bit of blue in there. We're going to save that. Soga tentacles only. All right, and now we need to do the eyes. Oops, not project. Open file, image. Okay, now we have these tiny little eyes. Now you can use the right mouse button, the middle mouse button, sorry, to drag it. And then you can use the mouse wheel to move it in so we can get closer to the actual eyes and see them better. Now we want these to be really thin, so I'm just going to go ahead and drop them down to 1. I think we probably want a dim style of eye. And then we just want to get the color about right. Now, I think that there's some gains to be made by using a slightly different blue. So I'm going to use this lake blue, sky blue. Get closer to what I want. And then probably we want a brighter white. This brighter white here. Now this is 4 colors, 1 AMS unit, which is nice. But we might actually want. It's also important to note that we can often, since we're thinning them out, we want these eyes really thin. We want them basically as thin as we can get them. So you can bring the top slider down and thin the mesh, and then you still have your blacks as blacks and your blues as blues. So maybe this white isn't as white as you want, though I will note in the eyes it wasn't super duper white. There was some blending there. Okay, that's the edge. See, the edges are darker, which is why we're getting a little bit of blue through the edge there. Now, also of note, this may be, if you have a 0.2mm nozzle, this might be a great thing to print on that 0.2 so you get more detail. Look at how much nicer those eyes look in 0.2 than 0.3, or with 0.1 detail level on a 0.2 nozzle. So these are real small prints. This is what you bring out your 0.2 millimeter nozzle for. It's still not going to take very long to print, but you're going to get a much better result. So I like that at 0.2, and I have a 0.2 millimeter nozzle, so I'm going to go ahead and save that project. And there we go. So now I've had a request to do the updates on this in PrusaSlicer, to do the slicing in PrusaSlicer to show you how it works. So let's bring up PrusaSlicer. And I will drag in these images. Let's start with the tentacles. Now I have this set for a much bigger printer, but it'll work. This should work on a smaller printer. Okay, one trick I've learned in PrusaSlicer, I've got this already set for my default 0.04, 0.16 millimeter first layer. I've unchecked basically all of these quality slower slicer settings except for detect thin walls. I've gone to classic, so you could do Arachne if you wanted. The big thing I found, and this surprised me, is these extrusion widths need to be fixed. If they're percentages, this slicing takes forever. I don't know why, but if these are fixed values, it works just fine. So let me go ahead and slice it. And I'll actually slice this live. It goes a lot faster. There you go. All done. So that's sliced for a 0.4 millimeter nozzle. Have that set here. It's my 0.4 with a 0.4 millimeter setting. All right, so now we need to pull up the description of this. So let me bring that up. Here we go. Here's the description. Now, I didn't set this black. This black is not the Petchy black. I just need a black back here. And then I'm going to do a blue and a natural or white. So then it's 0.32 and 0.4 are my swaps. So 0.32. Notice they have them labeled here on the side. This is very nice. 0.32, and you can see it is labeled layer 5. Let's confirm that. Layer 5, 0.32. Right click, add color change. Then you can set the color. I didn't used to do this. I used to just set them. You can set the color here, and this is like your darker blue. And then if we look, the next swap is at 0.4 here. Change, and this is a light blue. Oh, sorry. This is not blue. This is white. Okay, so we'll just, oops, change that out. We'll add our color swap back to white. All right, so we're going black, blue, white, and this is actually a regular blue. It doesn't really matter. You can right click and change the color here. This is like a regular blue. Okay, and then we'll bring this up, and you can see we have our swaps all set, and we're ready to go. And if we bring up HueForge, we open that project, and we look in this normal mode. We click normal. You can see that this looks the same. This, just like this. All right, so we're sliced there, and we send it off the printer. Each of them you do the same way. You just bring in the new file. Prusa also lets you do discard all custom changes, which is nice, so that you can. So one of the issues that you run into in Bamboo, if you don't make a new plate, if you make a new plate, you're all set. But if you don't make a new plate and you just delete it, and then you want to bring in the face, I'm loading it. Oh, that's the wrong file. I tried to bring in the describe text file. Okay, bring in the face. Now this background, what is going on here? That looks crazy. This is what I call the lazy programmer rectangle. It is transparent. When you slice this will go away. I'll show you that. But then I'm going to show you another way to make it go away, and it can actually fix some of these small open edges. See, it all went away when I sliced it. It's a zero height rectangle. It's my easy way to get transparent cutouts. But if you want to get rid of this, you don't like this, come here, choose a layer cut. You want object B, and then you just set the custom Z position to 0. That's literally just going to cut a infinitesimally small layer off the bottom, and then there you go. It's all gone. So if you don't like it, go ahead and do that. Okay, and then here, all these swaps are wrong, so let's just discard all of our custom changes. See all these kind of wiggly patterns here from the extrusions. And then what we're going to do is we're going to bring up that describe text here. So we need the 3, 6, 4, 4, 6, 4, 8, 8, and 1, 2, 8. I'm going to put this off the screen and just go through here. So the first one is to 0.36, and again, we can see it, so it's really nice. Head color, this one is going to a chocolate brown, so make it darker, brown. And then at 4, 4, we go to a red. At 6, 4, we go to our green, sorry, our yellow. At 19, sorry, and layer 19, which is 0.88, we switch to our natural, white. And then there's a second white. So at 128, we're going to go to white again. And I'm going to change this color just a little bit so that we can tell the difference, that there's a change. There you go. That's not obviously what it's going to look like in the when it's printed, but so one of these is a very high TD white. The natural is a very high TD white, and then this gray is a much lower TD white. This is going to give us our final highlights, make these quite bright white and things like that. So there you go. That's sliced and ready to go. You send it to your printer. Oh, you do have to slice it one more time. Now, this is a huge benefit of PrusaSlicer in my mind, that you can do all of these changes on the slider, manipulate them, do everything until you're all ready, and then you slice one last time. And then it tells you the breakdown of how much time everything's going to take, how much filament everything's going to take. You need 2.2 grams of black, 0.52 grams of brown, and so forth. Like very little filament. The whole thing, I think, is 5 grams. The whole thing is 6 grams over here. So this is how you do it in PrusaSlicer. You send it off the printer and you print it. So now this is going to be printed in 3 prints. If you have multiple printers, go ahead. In fact, I printed the face and the eyes at 0.2 millimeters actually on my 0.2 millimeter nozzle. And I printed the tentacle background on a 0.4 millimeter nozzle and got results that I'm very happy with. So I'm going to put those up at the end of the video. I know this was a longer video, but hopefully it was helpful in understanding both how the color modeling works and how the luminance model gives you your colors, but also how you can overcome that on at least some images. It's not going to work for every image, but on especially those color pop images where you have a lot of black and white and then a small colored area of red or yellow, something that stands out, you can do this process and get them separated relatively easily. So again, I'll put those images up there at the end and the final result. I hope this was helpful.